So, good day everyone. So, you're watching now for my discussions about methane theory. And that theory is all about a priming theory.
In this presentation, we're going to be looking at priming theory and the network model of memory, and why accessibility to information is so important, and how this primes us for other acceptability of material, how it primes our brain to receive certain things. And I'd like to express appreciation to Dr. Temple Northup of the U of H Communication faculty for giving these slides to me so that I can share these with you. Save me a lot of time and helps ensure the accuracy of what's being presented. What this is going to do is give us some modeling about how our brain works, and then we'll understand better, I believe, why priming with information is so important. And the simplest way to think about our brain is to think of it as a storage bin. And we've got all kinds of stuff crammed in there. In a more complex way, we can model our brain and say, let us imagine that imagine the brain as the cranium, much like, and we're making up a few words here to get started, but imagine an elaborate, frictionless pool table called the cranium. And we're indebted to Professor Hofstadter at Indiana for this visual metaphor. And in this table there are a myriad of tiny marbles, and these are small interacting marbles, so we're going to call them SIMS, S-I-M-S, SIMS. The SIMS are magnetic. They are small interacting magnetic marbles, or SIMMS, SIMS. Okay, when they hit each other, they can stick together to form clusters or symbols. 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 A symbol consists of a very large number of SIMS. And as it hits other symbols, it often loses a few SIMS while gaining others. You find that happening in this course. As you learn new symbols in one unit, you forget some of the material from another unit. This is how your brain works. Thus, the cranium involves SIMS racing around and crashing into each other and into symbols. And all of these collisions are happening all the time. The boundaries of the cranium react sensitively to outside forces by momentarily flexing a bit.
Hey, I'm Dave with the Jellyvision Lab, and today we're going to talk about priming. A cup of coffee can have a big impact on your behavior, and not just in the way you think. Psychologists Lawrence Williams and John Bargh did a test where they asked people to look at a photo of a guy that they'd never seen before and tell them on a scale from 1 to 10 how much they think they'd like him. Now, before they asked the question, they gave each person a cup of coffee to hold for a moment. Now, half the people got a cold cup of coffee, and the other half of people got a hot cup of coffee. The people who got the cold coffee said they liked the guy less, and the people who got the hot coffee said they liked the guy more. What's going on here? It's a psychological concept called priming. Certain conscious stimuli can influence or prime us subconsciously to be more inclined for a certain behavior or choice. The hot cup of coffee makes us more likely to like someone because in our brains, warmth and trust are correlated together. And the cold cup of coffee has the opposite effect. So, why am I telling you all of this? Well, there might be a page on your website that's performing really well, or performing really poorly, and you might think you know what's causing it, but there might be a priming effect present that you're missing. So whenever you change a page on your website with the goal of improving it, you should really A/B test that change in a randomized environment to make sure you're not accidentally removing the positive priming element that was making the page work, or accidentally adding a negative priming element that'll make the page, well, not work. Yes, priming is a weird little thing, but but it can have a big impact on the success of your online content. Just like that cold cup of coffee had a big impact on the way that people viewed the guy in that photo. The only way to find the cold cup of coffee hiding on your website is to look for it.
I don't like you.
So, when we say priming, it refers to enhancing the effect of the media by offering the audience a prior context, and this context is will be used to interpret subsequent communication. And the media serves to provide the audience with the standards in the frames of reference. So, what is the difference between the agenda settings to priming theory? So, agenda settings refers mainly to the importance of an issue, while priming tells us whether something is good or bad, whether it is communicated effectively. The media have primed the audience and about what is the news program looks like, and this is whether the media is credible or the person is credible in viewing this kind of medium. So there are three proponents in media effect, that is a priming, framing, and agenda setting. When we say priming is different from agenda setting or framing. Agenda setting means media's emphasis on a certain issues and makes audience with attached importance on the issue, while agenda setting is
the media is generally believed to influence people, and the many ways in which individuals and society may be influenced by both news and entertainment mass media are referred to as media effects. It's hardly controversial to say that these media sources can affect our view of the world, but let's talk a little about the ways they can do that. Priming. Media messages may help us to recall old ideas, knowledge, or experience. For example, a news story about the French presidential election might trigger thoughts about the French economy, memories of a trip to Paris, or remind a person to put brie on their grocery list. Agenda setting. Also called gatekeeping, this refers to the fact that the media controls the information we get, and therefore what we think about. Editors have a lot of power here, because they are ultimately the ones who decide what we're thinking about. Framing. Frames are the particular treatment or spin applied to a message. Often this ends up shaping our own opinions of the news, and who the good guy is in any situation. While agenda setting is choosing which stories to tell, framing is choosing how to tell them. Cultivation. After a lot of hours in front of the TV, people start to blur the lines between the real world and the one on TV. For example, based on the number of programs about police, you might guess that more than 1 in 10 men work in law enforcement, when really it's 1 in 100. Of course, some media messages, like ads and public information campaigns, are designed to change our attitudes or behavior. Factors that increase the likelihood of success include likability, credibility, or attractiveness of the source, the arguments used, and people who seem to agree with them. Media also plays a role in persuading people to adopt a new idea or practice. Often they first communicate messages about the new idea, which then spreads through interpersonal networks expanding over time to include social leaders, peers, and the community. This eventually leads to the adoption of the idea or innovation, reaching a critical mass. In today's world, it's impossible to avoid media influence, but by understanding the way it works, you can win back control of your perception and seek to have a balanced view of the world and the people in it.
Agenda settings and priming are related to each other. Agenda settings and priming are related to each other in the mass media affect people's judgment, and this is the priming, and by making some issues salient than the others, and that is our agenda settings. And both models are based on the media's ability to increase accessibility. On the other hand, it is refers how the news media characterize an issue and how the issue influences the audiences and the perceptions of the issues. So there are different kinds of characteristics of priming. The violence priming, or it is the cognitive process of violence priming, and it is explained by the general affective regression model. And another one is the political priming. It is a research on the political priming has explored the impact of the media coverage on the judgment of politicians and found that media can prime certain issues and thereby influence the criteria that people use to evaluate politicians. And the last one is the stereotype priming. It is influences not only the perceptions of the stereotype people, but also the political judgment related to the stereotype group. So, usually the priming is more likely conceptualized in political situation. I hope that you enjoy my discussions about what is priming theory, and I hope that you learn a simple things about my discussions, but that simple things can be your motivations or be your guide to be a better person. I'm just kidding. God bless. Bye.